I don't want to break my limbs running over the humps and hollows of this wild country. No, I neither, between you and me. These shepherd people are used to it, simple-minded souls, you know. Stirred up to anything in a moment. They'll have him ready for me before the morning, and no trouble to me at all. They'll have him, and we shall have saved ourselves all labor in the matter. True, true. Well, my way is to Casterbridge, and 'tis as much as my legs will do to take me that far. Going the same way? No, I am sorry to say. I have to get home over there. He nodded indefinitely to the right, and I feel as you do. That it is quite enough for my legs to do before bedtime. The other had by this time finished the mead in the mug, after which, shaking hands heartily at the door, and wishing each other well, they went their several ways. In the meantime, the company of pursuers had reached the end of the Hog's Back elevation which dominated this part of the down. They had decided on no particular plan of action, and, finding that the man of the baleful trade was no longer in their company, they seemed quite unable to form any such plan now. They descended in all directions down the hill, and straightway several of the party fell into the snare set by nature for all misguided midnight ramblers over this part of the Cretaceous formation. The lancers, or flint slopes, which belted the escarpment at intervals of a dozen yards, took the less cautious ones unawares. And losing their footing on the rubbly steep, they slid sharply downwards, the lanterns rolling from their hands to the bottom, and there lying on their sides till the horn was scorched through. When they had again gathered themselves together, the shepherd, as the man who knew the country best, took the lead, and guided them round these treacherous inclines. The lanterns, which seemed rather to dazzle their eyes and warn the fugitive than to assist them in the exploration, were extinguished, due silence was observed. And in this more rational order they plunged into the vale. It was a grassy, briny, moist defile, affording some shelter to any person who had sought it, but the party perambulated it in vain, and ascended on the other side. Here they wandered apart, and after an interval closed together again to report progress. At the second time of closing in they found themselves near a lonely ash. The single tree on this part of the coombe, probably sown there by a passing bird some 50 years before. And here, standing a little to one side of the trunk, as motionless as the trunk itself, appeared the man they were in quest of, his outline being well defined against the sky beyond. The band noiselessly drew up and faced him. "Your money or your life," said the constable sternly to the still figure. "No, no," whispered John Pitcher. "'Tisn't our side ought to say that. That's the doctrine of vagabonds like him. And we be on the side of the law." "Well, well," replied the constable impatiently. "I must say something, mustn't I? And if you had all the weight of this undertaking upon your mind, perhaps you'd say the wrong thing too. Prisoner at the bar, surrender, in the name of the Father the Crown, I mane." The man under the tree seemed now to notice them for the first time, and, giving them no opportunity whatever for exhibiting their courage, he strolled slowly towards them. He was, indeed, the little man, the third stranger, but his trepidation had in a great measure gone. "Well, travellers," he said, "did I hear ye speak to me?"